Thank you very much for joining me today on the 20th of January in 2017 for Rainbow Warriors Rise. And we need to wake up and rise because we are living in insane times. Rainbow Warriors Rise. It's time to realize we've got to break through their lies. Rainbow Warriors Rise. Rainbow Warriors Rise. Can't you hear our children's cries? Our sons and daughters, they're breaking. All our freedom they're taking. It is time to rise. It is time to rise. We have to rise. We have to be strong enough to face the truth. And the truth is nothing like we thought it was when we were growing up. The truth isn't like a lot of statistics that I can give you from history books. The truth actually is easy to recognize because it's all around us. Poverty is all around us. Fear is all around us. The threat of war is all around us. We haven't been paying attention. We're beginning to now, but we've got to start cracking through and really looking at what is happening and what role we are playing in it. We should have paid much more attention. It was only, I think, 10 days after September 11th when General Wesley Clark was telling us that he had just found out that we were going into 7 countries. Iraq, Iran, Syria, Libya. Just coincidentally, countries that don't have central banking, that didn't have central banking. Which was not really a coincidence because this is all about global control. This is all about world government, a one world government. People now who are so upset and they're out there blaming Trump are really not doing their homework at all because it's not just Trump. Trump just barely has his feet wet being in the not-so-White House. But before that, we had Bush, Daddy Bush, former head of the CIA, when President Kennedy was assassinated, and there are pictures that claim that they're of him. I have seen the pictures. It's very possible that it was George Bush there to make sure that the plot went down. This is an occasion where that generation dropped the ball by not demanding accountability. My mother was one person, though, who didn't, and she knew that it was just a bunch of hogwash. But most people believe the stories that they hear, which are really doing a great disservice. So Bush, as a head of CIA back then when he finally does get selected, he's there for 4 years. His idiot savant son is there for another 8 years. Then we have Obama for 8 years. Democratic parties, the Clintons were in there as well. We've got nothing but a history of being sold out by the people who supposedly are paid to take care of us. And because we have not demanded accountability from these people because we put them on a pedestal, we're not getting anything that is even relatively close to justice. Instead, it's like what Gerald Celente said, just us. The evil, lying, inbred, traitorous eugenicists who prefer to be called elite. But that is truly what it stands for. They are evil. They are lying. They are inbred to protect their own bloodline. They are traitorous. And they are eugenicists. Because what's happening right now is depopulation on a global mass scale. When Wesley Clark talked about taking out and invading 7 countries in 5 years, well, it's taken a little longer. And actually, there were 8 countries. Because America is the country that really is the one being taken down. You can look at it in our failing infrastructure. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we're facing now, with California being, I think, the 7th largest global economy in the world, you need to take that down. California has all kinds of natural resources. You can't have that. We've got to get it in there so that they can control everything. This is not an accident. This is not an accident. The Oroville Dam, perhaps Oroville's most famous site, is one of 20 largest dams in the world, the largest earth-filled dam in the U.S., as well as the tallest dam in the U.S. This dam is 770 feet tall and 6,920 feet long, and it impounds Lake Oroville, which has a capacity of 3,500,000 acre-feet of water, making it the second largest reservoir in California. Now, Wikipedia, in January, they had the following. In early January, but as of January 9th, I've got an email, and the screenshot shows that what they omitted here in WikiLeaks, this was directly following that sentence, that if you go to the Wayback Machine, I think it's January 9th of this year, it was changed. Prior to that, it said, "This is one of the most important parts of the California State Water Project. See also the Central Valley Project, a federal undertaking. Both systems move water from water-rich Northern California to water-poor Southern California. This facility is operated by the California Department of Water Resources, which is undergoing contract renewal with the city of Oroville and Butte County. The state has not paid any taxes on this facility nor developed the lake for recreation as originally promised, which has been a bone of contention with the local government and residents." My husband and I watched YouTube that also said the people who were living there cannot recall the last time that they actually had any kind of a drill. It was just omitted. It's just, all these people and corporations want to make money. That's their bottom line. And when things go bad, not only do they make money off of things that go bad, but then they're going to rebuild it so they can make more money. So here was the another article that I have today. And if you do have a question or a comment, it's going to be hard for me to get it today, but if you put it in the chat, Patty, if you see a good question or if someone wants clarification, pop in there, because I can't monitor the chat room and read at the same time. So this is actually an older article, and it talks about the governorship of Jesuit Jerry Brown and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. They continue to wreak havoc across the state. There's no other state in the Union that is so integral to the successful implementation of the UN's 21 as California. The Golden State has become a test tube for social engineering. Thank you, Patty. Immigration crisis via illegal alien influx, geoengineering, alternating droughts and deluges via chemtrails, HARP, and civil engineering built on fault lines. The very timing of Jerry Brown's term as the 39th governor of California since 2011 holds the key to understanding so much adversity that has befallen the state. Now, Jerry Brown, a Jesuit, this is also, Trump had Jesuit training. The Jesuits are the military arm of the Pope. And Peter J. Veitch has YouTubes out there, if they are still out there. It's VIETCH. And he actually clues us in on to what the oath is that they take. And the oath is basically to protect the Catholic Church against everyone who has any kind of disagreement with it whatsoever. Historically also, it's questionable whether or not the Catholic Church and those behind it came up with a Muslim faith. But we don't look at that. We're too busy trying to be good people, trying to integrate, trying to welcome immigrants. I had a very, very interesting letter, and I'll get back to the dam here, but on immigration, and I realize we are a country that was, I almost started to repeat the lie, founded on, Christian values and all this, but it isn't. Columbus did not discover this country. There were anywhere between 12 the 22 million Native Americans living upon this country. It was not discovered by Columbus, who is a war criminal. It was not discovered by the Vikings. There were already people living here on the land in little communities, and some of them not so little communities. They were bartering. They had control of themselves. Now, yes, they fought as well. We seem to have this within us that we've got to be suppressing our neighbors. We've got to be fighting. We've got to be killing because there isn't enough, which is also a big lie in an abundant world. But what we're facing now in terms of the immigration, in terms of the Muslims, in terms of the fighting, you know, it's also said that the Muslims and the Christians are supposed to cancel each other out so we can move into this new world religion. Everything belongs to everything. And while we are part of everything, light, we're not really a part of all the darkness unless we choose to be. So this is a very interesting email, and I'm going to share this because it specifically addresses the immigration. Muslim faith. Can a devout Muslim be an American patriot and a loyal citizen? Consider this. Theologically, no, because his allegiance is to Allah, the moon god of Arabia. Scripturally, no, because his allegiance is to the 5 pillars of Islam and the Quran. A little aside note on that is when Obama did leave the White House, they found that he definitely had his Muslim altar there. They were very much into honoring his Muslim religion over the religion of Christianity that had been embraced by his predecessors. So, okay, scripturally, no, because his allegiance is to the 5 pillars of Islam and to the Quran. Okay, so can a devout Muslim be an American patriot and loyal citizen? Geographically, no, because his allegiance is to Mecca, to which he turns to pray 5 times a day. Socially, no, because his allegiance to Islam forbids him to make friends with Christians or Jews. Okay, now, Jews also have this heavy-handed way of looking at the world where they are the chosen race, which is, again, a bunch of bullcrap. But here we go with Muslims again. Okay, politically, can they be good Americans? No, because he must submit to the mullah, to the spiritual leaders who teach annihilation of Israel and destruction of America, the great Satan. Domestically, no, because he's instructed to marry 4 women and beat and scourge his wife when she disobeys him. Now, this is directly from the Quran. It's 4.34. Religiously, no, because no other religion is accepted by his Allah except Islam. Quran 2-256. Intellectually, no, because he cannot accept the American Constitution since it is based on biblical principles, and he believes the Bible to be corrupt. Philosophically, no, because Islam, Muhammad, and the Quran do not allow freedom of religion and expression. Spiritually, no, because when we declare one nation under God, the Christian's God is loving and kind, while Allah is never referred to as our Heavenly Father, nor is he ever called love in the Quran's 99 excellent names. Democracy and Islam cannot coexist. Every Muslim government is either dictatorial or autocratic. Therefore, after much study and deliberation, perhaps we should be very suspicious of all Muslims in this country. They obviously cannot be both good Muslims and good Americans. Call it what you wish, it is still the truth. If you find yourself intellectually in agreement with the above, perhaps you will share this with your friends. The more who understand this, the better it will be for our country. The war is bigger than we know. Now, this is curious to me because it's logical. It's very logical. So what we need to do is really begin to break through all of this. And I'm going to continue to read because this leads us into something else that I had not considered. Okay, to be all-American, one must support the Constitution and the principles of our founding fathers. There's no room for Sharia law or supporters of that backwards Islamic state of laws. I agree that there's no room for backwards Islamic laws that prevent people from actually enjoying their own personal, private freedom in their own lives. Because the only thing that we really own is ourselves. And so right now, as the world is in turmoil, we all have to start paying attention so we can step more into self-ownership and be accountable. To be all-American and support the Constitution, that sounds real good, but I question everything, and I also question why I need to be tied to books and legislation that were written on my behalf that I had nothing to do with. Nothing to do with. And yet these are being forced upon me. Yes, they're good, they're great ideas, but the men who wrote the Constitution were business owners. Some of them were actively still going back and forth to England. Benjamin Franklin was in the Hellfire Club. He used to hang out in the French court. You know, Thomas Jefferson, well, he can talk about all men being equal. Well, he still kept his slaves. And we're all slaves until we really wake up. Okay, now in this article, it says there is no room for Sharia law or supporters of that backwards Islamic system of laws. Okay, and the answer, it says, is hijrah. What is hijrah? We understand far too little about Muslims leaving their home. Obama's well educated in the Muslim religion since he studied it while living in Indonesia. He does not want this information to be spread all over the U.S. because he wants to be totally ignorant of what is really going on with the ISIL movement. That makes all the turmoil now make sense, but it's sad and it doesn't bode well for us. As a matter of fact, Obama also, who, in my opinion, is a complete traitor, he brought up our national debt. He superseded the national debt of all the former presidents. And he and his tranny wife, Michelle, or else she is a hermaphrodite, but there's no doubt in my mind, after doing research as well, that Michelle is a tranny, and they're into the gay lifestyle. Their children, in my research, have been adopted. So he's also, a Muslim in the office, where you can look online and find for yourself information about how Muslim was revered in the White House. Trump threw out what he had there and has brought it back to Christianity, which is his chosen faith, until Israel calls him on the carpet, and then he bows to Israel as well. So it's really about the money. Nobody's owning themselves. It's about the money. But hijrah is something we all need to be aware of. Hijrah is when large-scale mass migrations become invasions. When Trump talked about Sweden letting them in, and then the Swedish authorities said, he's making up terrorism. Well, if you've watched, as my husband and I have, some of these migrants coming in, they are 18 to 25-year-old men. There were camps actually in some of these other countries that said, we're caring for the children. We didn't see any children there. We saw men who were soldiers' age, and very rarely a woman or a child. So hijrah is when large-scale mass migrations become invasions. What is happening in parts of Europe right now actually appears to be hijrah as the Quran describes it. This is not going to end well because it appears the policies of liberal socialist leaders in Europe and the U.S. do not want to keep their lands from being overrun. Why? I couldn't figure out why other Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, etc., weren't taking in refugees, so I started digging. Now, this isn't me digging. This is from this article where the author is not credited. Hijrah is jihad by emigration. It means moving to a new land in order to bring Islam there, and is considered in Islam to be a holy and revered action. And whoever emigrates for the cause of Allah will find on the earth many locations and abundance, and whoever leaves his home as an emigrant to Allah and his messenger, and then death overtakes him, his reward has already become incumbent upon Allah. This is taken from the Surah, S-U-R-A-H, 4 and then dash 100. So consider that. If a Muslim dies in the process of immigrating to another country, that's essentially the same as being a suicide bomber. His reward is automatic. This explains the great eagerness to undertake such a perilous journey. Muhammad and his followers immigrated from Mecca to Yarib, Medina in 622 CE. It was there he became a military leader, though still uneducated. This is where all the commands to commit violence against unbelievers originated. It's important to note that the Islamic calendar marks this as the beginning of Islam. This current massive hijra was announced last January, although few Muslim countries paid the announcement much attention. A supporter or member of ISIS uploaded a document in Arabic that urged Muslims to get to Libya because of its proximity to southern Europe and for the important tactical value of its illegal immigration circuits to facilitate infiltration of European cities. Libya has a long coast and looks upon the southernmost countries of Western Europe, which can be reached with ease by even a rudimentary boat. In February, transcripts of telephone intercepts published in Italy said ISIS was threatening to send 500,000 migrants as a psychological weapon against Europe. The Italian Minister for the Interior, Angelina Alfano, said at the time, if the militias of the caliphate advance faster than the decisions of the international community, how can we put out the fire in Libya and stem the migration flows? We are at a risk of exodus without precedent. Also in February, the Turkish intelligence service warned police that up to 3,000 trained jihadists were seeking to cross into Turkey from Syria and Iraq and then travel through Bulgaria and Hungary into Western Europe and then into the rest of Europe. In May, a Libyan government advisor warned that Islamic State operatives were being smuggled to Europe in migrant boats. ISIS is profiting from the human trafficking trade, forcing boat owners to hand over their profits or be killed. Some ISIS operatives are already sheltered in safe houses in the south of Europe. And of course, we have direct proof, I'm not reading now, but direct proof that ISIS was created by the CIA, by our own so-called intelligence agencies. Not much intelligence there as far as I'm concerned. Groups of men aged 17 to 25 from Palestine and Syria crossing into Bulgaria and from there move into the rest of the European Union. A former Al-Qaeda double agent told the BBC that he knew of two Egyptian brothers who reached Italy from Libya accompanied by men who were deeply religious and fluent in Italian and French. So I want to encourage you to think about what I've read here and to watch videos of the refugees again. How many are 17 to 25-year-old men and of military age? We already know terrorists are coming through with a wave of refugees. 5 men were arrested attempting to cross the Bulgarian-Macedonian border with Islamic State propaganda, specific jihadist prayers, and decapitation videos on their phones. They have been posing as refugees. UK Independence Party leader Nigel Farage warned, I fear we face a direct threat to our civilization if we allow large numbers of people from that war-torn region into Europe. Other Muslim countries are not taking in these refugees because this is a hijra into Europe. This is no humanitarian crisis. It is an invasion. Its goal is to transform Europe, overtax its economies, tear down its wealthiest nations, redraw the demographics, and, of course, the culture. And Obama already had announced over 100,000 refugees are going to arrive here in the U.S. in 2017. Now, my husband had a comment here, too, that I think is very good. When he was young, and if a country was going to invade, ISIS and these armies, why are these young men not saying, okay, women and children, you can be the refugees. I do see where you need to be protected, where our families, our culture does need to be protected. But then again, all cultures are going to go through culture shock when they find out all the lies that have been told, because we've got to break through all of this. We've got to break through all of the labels, and we have to start thinking with our hearts, and we have to own ourselves. We have to own ourselves. So these young men of fighting age could be back home and they could be starting to rebuild and challenge what's there, but instead they're just coming across. And if you have not seen all the trouble that's caused in these countries, in Germany, by all these Muslims, if you haven't seen the rapes and where they beat up women, they don't consider anyone who is not Muslim as really a human being, which is kind of like Jews don't consider anyone who is not a Jew to be anything other than goyim or cattle to be used. These religious doctrines are enslaving our minds and squashing our hearts out of empathy because it's being used to justify the horrific acts that are taking place. I don't care where you came from. It is not acceptable to deliberately cause harm, injury, or loss. And yet this is being done, and they are trying to make it seem like it's okay and eliminate other words. Oh, now we don't want to talk about expectant mothers because you will offend some of the LGBT crowd who can't get pregnant. Well, they shouldn't be pregnant. This is another huge attack on the family, a huge attack on the family, and it's totally targeting our children who would not have known about blowjobs had it not been for Bill Clinton. Well, now they learned about twerking from Miley Cyrus. She's a poor little MK Ultra victim. I'm sure her father has great knowledge of her. Her younger sister's now coming up in the business. This all goes back to Walt Disney, to MK Ultra, to the wars that they were promoting with Goofy joins the army. You know, look at Mickey Mouse in uniform, Donald Duck. We live in insane times. And the only way that we can really rise up is to begin to be educated ourselves and to really claim self-ownership and to challenge what Larkin Rose says is the most dangerous superstition, and I agree, and that's one of authority. Now, before I do go there, though, I want to make another point here about the Oroville Dam. Okay, all of the administrations prior to this are the ones who set it up. Trump did not put in the statutes or oversee any of this. Look at Obama for the last 8 years. Anyone who still thinks Obama is anything to be emulated, now, yes, he probably was put through horrific MK Ultra training as a child, but when you're responsible for killing millions of people, I think it would be wiser to take yourself out if you actually had any sense of morality. You know, I think it's time we step into judgment big time, because unless we can judge what's going on around us and judge these policies, then we're going to be caught up in the bullcrap part of the New Age movement, which is forgive everything and don't judge. That's what they want to propagate. They don't want us judging because we're not qualified to judge. They're qualified to judge, and they judge that profit needs to be valued over people and that one global government is the best way to go for their future. So now here is from Lorraine Murray, who's done a lot of work on Fukushima, but here are some of her thoughts on the dam. This was from 1 day ago. I was contacted by a volunteer fireman in North Carolina several years ago. He confided in me that the fire chief had told the firefighters, volunteers and full-time, that they would be doing a drill practicing their response in the event that a local dam collapsed upriver from a large populated area. He confided in a horrified tone that they were also told the approximate date when the dam collapse would actually begin. This confirmed for me what I had already suspected, that the Army Corps of Engineers had deliberately built over 50% of their dams throughout the U.S. on active fault lines in locations where large populations were downriver. They were built in anticipation of future disaster events that could be artificially triggered at strategic times by HARP and other technologies to destroy a lot of people and the local economies. They also are building all the nuclear sites, of course, on the fault lines and things. Japan has 100 nuclear sites, and with the radiation from Japan They're talking about 530 sieverts, although my husband saw where it was also reported as 630 sieverts. 5 sieverts will kill you. Their robots aren't lasting under there. This is depopulation. And you combine that with the geoengineering and the chemicals they're dropping from the sky as they're also obliterating the sky and taking away the power of solar panels. We're being steered toward our own destruction. So General Wesley Clark was wrong. It's 8 countries they're going after, and America, even though it wasn't listed, is first and foremost. Okay, back to Lorraine Murray. The heavy rain and snow periods over the last 2 months, December 2016, January, February 2017, moving from the west coast east across the nation, caused by obvious military weather modifications using HARP technology, quite obvious on AccuWeather daily and hourly maps, have artificially caused what people believe are natural disasters. The so-called intelligence agencies are secretly using these invisible technologies to destroy infrastructure, agriculture, and economies, especially in agricultural areas. People will lose homes, barns, and crops, forcing them into urban areas where they will become dependent on government assistance and no longer be able to be self-sufficient and independent. In other words, they will lose their wealth, personal sovereignty, and the farmlands will be rolled into the Agenda 21 Jesuit Monsanto global takeover of food production. It's now Agenda 2030. The global Jesuit scam, food security, will be pumped out of the new UC Davis Food Institute, among other New World Order headquarters, to further enslave humanity, poison their food, and inaugurate devastating periods of genocide caused by famine. By the way, the opening ceremony of the new UC Davis Food Institute was graced by none other than the Napa Valley Rothschilds, San Francisco Gordon Gettys, and their New World Order Chancellor, Linda Katehi, who was fired soon after the ceremony. So our destruction is planned, but what we're not doing is listening, because we're thinking that these so-called authorities have that they're telling us the truth. But when you really stop and break it down, they are telling you what they want you to know. It is absolutely horrific what is going on in our world and to our brothers and sisters that we're not aware of. And so the big thing that we need to do, we need to wake the frack up. And in order to do that, we've got to examine the greatest superstition. And I totally agree with Larkin Rose. The greatest superstition, the big myth to get rid of, the most dangerous superstition by Larkin Rose is authority. Now, he says preparing the reader, but this is basically preparing the listener. This is how he opens his book. What you read in this book will, in all likelihood, go directly against what you have been taught by your parents and your teachers, what you have been told by churches, the media, and the government, and much of what you, your family, and your friends have always believed. Nonetheless, it is the truth, as you will see if you allow yourself to consider the issue objectively. Not only is it the truth, it may also be the most important truth you will ever hear. More and more people are discovering this truth, but to do so, it is necessary to look past many preconceived assumptions and deeply ingrained superstitions, to set aside one's lifelong indoctrination and to examine some new ideas fairly and honestly. If you do this, you will experience a dramatic change in how you view the world. It will almost certainly feel uncomfortable at first, but in the long run it will be well worth the effort, and if enough people choose to see this truth and embrace it, not only will it drastically change the way these people see the world, it will drastically change the world itself for the better. But if such a simple truth could change the world, wouldn't we already know about it? And wouldn't we have put it into practice long ago? If humans were purely a race of thinking, objective beings, yes. But history shows that most human beings would literally rather die than objectively reconsider the belief systems they were brought up in. The average man who reads in the newspaper about war, oppression, and injustice will wonder why such pain and suffering exists and will wish for it to end. However, if it is suggested to him that his own beliefs are contributing to the misery, he will almost certainly dismiss such a suggestion without a second thought and may even attack the one making the suggestion. That's very important there, because it's not easy to step back and examine our lifelong held belief systems, which are lies. So many lies out there. Again, in my opinion, the way to find the truth is to look around you. And the truth is our world is being destroyed. Water protectors are raising a wonderful issue. We need water protectors for the ocean. We need to stop allowing the fake news, mainstream media to tell us things like, oh, it's an algae bloomer. We don't know why the starfish are dying without ever once talking about the 300 tons of radioactive water pumped into the Pacific every day since March in 2011. Every day. So if your beliefs and superstitions, many of which you did not choose for yourself but merely inherited as unquestioned, hand-me-down beliefs, if they matter to you more than truth and justice, then this book is not for you. If, on the other hand, you're willing to question some of your long-held preconceived notions, if doing so might reduce the suffering of others, then read the book and then give it to someone else. You can also find this online, although I am noticing that there are some typos here. I will put it into the chat room because it's really important. So, the most dangerous superstition, starting with the punchline. How many millions have gazed upon the brutal horrors of history, with its countless examples of man's inhumanity to man, and wonder how such things could happen? The truth is, most people wouldn't want to know how it happens because they themselves are religiously attached to the very belief that makes it possible. The vast majority of suffering and injustice in the world today, and spanning back thousands of years, can be directly attributed to a single idea. It is not greed or hatred or any of the other emotions or ideas that are usually blamed for the evils of society. Instead, most of the violence, theft, assault, and murder in the world is the result of a mere superstition, a belief which, though almost universally held, runs contrary to all evidence and reason, though of course those who hold the belief do not see it that way. The punchline of this book is easy to express, albeit differently for most people to accept or even to calmly and rationally contemplate. The belief in authority, which includes all belief in government, is irrational and self-contradictory. It is contrary to civilization and morality and constitutes the most dangerous, destructive superstition that has ever existed. Rather than being a force for order and justice, the belief in authority is the archenemy of humanity. And I agree completely with that sentence. Of course, nearly everyone is raised to believe the exact opposite, that obedience to authority is a virtue, at least in most cases, that respecting and complying with the laws of government is what makes us civilized, and that disrespect for authority leads only to chaos and violence. In fact, people have been so thoroughly trained to associate obedience with being good that attacking the concept of authority will sound to most people like suggesting there is no such thing as right and wrong, no need to abide by any standards of behavior, no need to have any morals at all. That is not what is being advocated here. Quite the opposite. Indeed, the reason the myth of authority needs to be demolished is precisely because there is such a thing as right and wrong. It does matter how people treat each other, and people should always strive to live moral lives. Despite the constant authoritarian propaganda claiming otherwise, having respect for authority and having respect for humanity are mutually exclusive and diametrically opposed. The reason to have no respect for the myth of authority is so that we can have respect for humanity and justice. You know that's true if you really think about that with your heart. Our money in America, our money goes to fund these black ops, and Soros just takes what he wants from the black ops to foment treason all around here. Obama wanting to have an army of 30,000 people at his beck and call. Okay, so is Obama really part of the Hijra? Is he planning on having 30,000 dyed-in-the-wool Muslims who want to go to heaven? Excuse me. Is that why he had the 8 years? Is that why he talked about being in there longer? And is that why the news media, the fake frack of news media, is not ever saying anything about all of his crimes? He is a criminal. He is a criminal. And he's responsible for millions of deaths. One drone strike for someone who is accused of a crime, which does not mean convicted, just accused of a crime, takes out 50 innocent people who are by him. 50 people. But, oh yeah, that's okay for us. Millions of Iraqis dead. And look what we're doing now in Syria. And with Trump's ban, trying to make a ban, he's not looking at Saudi Arabia or Israel. Those are two real terrorist countries, but now they're focused on banging the drum about how bad Iran is. Oh yeah, Iran is getting rid of the almighty dollar next month. All these other countries did not have central banking. Libya was actually going to introduce the gold dinar until Gaddafi was sodomized and killed on camera, and Hillary Clinton just laughed about it. So anyone voting for Hillary, I just don't understand all this anger and blaming someone who's barely even stepped into the office. And I'm not saying that I'm a Trump fan, and hopefully what you're getting from me is I'm not a fan of government. I would be a fan of rotating administrators and rolling up our sleeves, because action is what counts. What we bring to the table in our actions is what counts. And the only ways that we are restricted are every way we're going to need to buy some supplies so that we can create something. So we're going to have to go out like our forefathers did and start getting it off the land. But oh no, it's the king's land. So there is such a thing as right and wrong. And you know that when they're dropping bombs on cities and sleeping civilians, that is wrong. The very idea of dropping bombs in the 21st century is so against humanity and so against where we should be. And when I hear people talking in the New Age area, and they're talking about, yes, but we're moving into the fifth and the sixth dimension, and imagine yourself, your future self, in the sixth dimension so that you can escape all this and start pulling us all towards that goal. It sounds really nice, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing us change. I'm seeing us still waiting for somebody to save us. February 17th, there was supposed to be a huge national strike. I didn't hear anything really about that. You know, they don't want us to yank the chain and take their money back, take our money back. They don't want us rolling up our sleeves actually and saying, screw your money. I can actually just do this job. Hey, I can go out here and build this fence using lumber I find that's just around. Lumber, some of the trees that fall down. We can't go in and take good care of our forests either, because you can't go in and help, you know, in the little part and take some of the debris away and take some of the bigger trees that have been fallen by the wind. No, you can't do that. Just like here in Oregon now, they used to be able, if someone hit a deer on the highway, well, there's a safari that, an African safari place that would come up and pick up the deer and take it back because they've got big cats there and they could actually eat that meat. Well, what they do now is you have to ignore it. We actually had some friends who they had us over for dinner and we had to leave early. We ate on their patio, but because they were so much into following the law, a deer had been hit right on their property. And it was decomposing and smelled absolutely horrific. And he would do nothing to stop that smell, meaning that's also illness. If you have to smell decomposing bodies, you're going to be getting sick. I mean, it's a breakdown. It's planned. Then they'll get sick. So that's what people do around here. They're afraid. So all of this, we are truly in the end times. The end times either for people as individuals who can think and who can hold each other accountable, and who have not done so yet. And we need to rise. And Rainbow Warrior Tribe, you need to rise. You need to rise. Listen to your heart. You cannot think anymore with your head because it's all about lies. All about lies. And they could show us a picture of Donald Trump saying all kinds of things that he didn't say. They can do that now. They can manipulate your mouth. They can manipulate the video. They can manipulate everything. And they've been manipulating our hearts for far too long. Back to Larkin. There's a harsh contrast between what we are taught is the purpose of authority, which is to create a peaceful, civilized society, and the real-world results of authority in action. Flip through any history book and you will see that most of the injustice and destruction that has occurred throughout the world was not the result of the people breaking the law, but rather the result of people obeying and enforcing the laws of various governments. The evils that have been committed in spite of authority are trivial compared to the evils that have been committed in the name of authority. If people hadn't obeyed Hitler to go out and kill and round up their fellow brothers and sisters to pretend that they were the superior race, if no one had obeyed, it wouldn't have happened. That's where order followers. It is not a compliment to be known as an order follower, and if you are wearing a uniform, you need to look in the mirror. Because children are still being taught that peace and justice come from authoritarian control, and that despite the flagrant evils committed by authoritarian regimes around the world throughout history, they are still morally obligated to respect and obey the current government of their own country. And when you break down government, a governor is put on your car to regulate the speed. Ment is mind. They want to govern our minds. Let's wave the flags. Let's have songs. Let's reach us on all the different levels so we can really get involved in it. America, America. But it's all countries have been graced with life by the source, by the creator. We are individual aspects of life who have been trained throughout our entire history, especially through school, to obey. You obey, or else the guy who has more bullies buying into his bullcrap is going to come over and take away what you believe you own. And actually, we don't own anything. If you really look at the truth of America, our names in capital letters on our licenses and on contracts and things, that's because we're a corporation. We were turned into a corporation with the Act of 1871. We haven't gotten out since. So doing as you're told is synonymous with being a good person. Playing by the rules is synonymous with doing the right thing. And on the contrary, being a moral person requires taking on the personal responsibility of judging right from wrong and following one's own conscience, which is the total opposite of respecting and obeying authority. In World War II, the authorities, the ones that we're told are the heroes. Winston fracking Churchill, another eugenicist, another mass murderer. Well, our guys, the good guys, America and Europe, well, let's go over and bomb Berlin. Okay, they bombed it that night, and it was horrific. And then let's go back and bomb Berlin the next night. So that when people are just starting to clean up a little, to come out when there's light in the daytime, when they can try and make some semblance of their lives and help the people who are in more trouble than they are. Well, the next night, we'll bomb them again. 3, 4, 5 nights in a row. The Allied soldiers, fighting the good fight, went in and slaughtered the Germans. This was not a Jewish genocide. This was a German genocide. And it was also about the secret technology, which we may find out sooner than later, up there in the Antarctic. So it is just lie after lie after lie, and as long as we are obedient to authority, we're complicit in the actions they take. We have blood on our hands from the bombs that are being dropped, the drones that are being dropped, all this money that should have gone into our infrastructure. Did Obama do it? No. So anyone who tells me they judge Obama to be a good person, in my book, they're totally wrong. Because if you're in charge of something, if you're supposed to be overseeing it, then, and if you won the Peace Prize, for frack's sake, come on. He's not a hero. And it is my ability to judge him because I don't want to follow his fracking orders. I don't want to have to pay taxes, hidden taxes, that are stolen from me so that they can make bombs. NASA, my husband and I this morning just watched NASA sent up in its rocket MRSA, the MRSA fracking virus that is immune to antibiotics, so they're going to study it in space. Think about that. Think about what they're already dropping on us. I listened to another psychic who has a pretty good track record. He's over in the UK. One of his predictions for this year is massive, massive disease coming around December that'll wipe out many of us. Well, if they're shooting MRSA up there in rockets to study in space, right. You know, it was probably in the exhaust as it went up. And it'll probably turn up in the chemtrails that go across us. And this is us obeying authority and not looking up and saying, wait a minute, wait just a minute here. When I grew up, a contrail was a condensation trail that lasted maybe a mile behind a plane. Not one that covered the complete sky and joined others and fanned out. I have counted over 22 chemtrails right here in this beautiful spot that we're in. 22 chemtrails. They block out the sun. And then they want us to obey. And now they're getting ready to give us a false flag so that we won't start questioning this. The Oroville Dam, can you imagine being only given a 3-hour notice and being on the road and all of a sudden you're stuck in traffic for 6 hours? Can you imagine the feeling of fear knowing that at any time you could be swept away in a huge rush of water that you had absolutely no control over? Yeah, but you obey. You wait until they tell you. You obey. We don't challenge them in town. The people who live there don't start going up and saying, hey, wait, we need to take care of this, because you can't do that. You got to obey authority. They know better. They know better. They want the money. So the primary danger posed by the myth of authority is to be found not in the minds of the controllers and government, but in the minds of those being controlled. One nasty individual who loves to dominate others is a trivial threat to humanity unless a lot of other people view such domination as legitimate, because it is achieved via the laws of government. The twisted mind of Adolf Hitler by itself posed little or no threat to humanity. It was the millions of people who viewed Hitler as authority, including Hitler was on the Timez here in the United States. He was a big hero back then when he was taking money from Prescott Bush, the father of George W. Bush, the first trader. Or not the first trader, his dad, was pretty much of a trader. All of this has been in plan for a while, for a long time. I just heard this morning, although I have to look more into it, the Cheney's one behind a lot of the trying to get rid of Trump. So Cheney and, the Clintons are all in bed together, and the Obamas are in bed together. As long as their agenda keeps coming up, the Project for a New American Century is one that hopefully you're familiar with. And this is when they were planning how to make America the strongest, the imperial country. We are America. Oh, yeah, we're great. And too many people still swallow that lie of crap without looking at how we got here through lies and deception, and we're being lied to right now. And they need false flags like the Oroville Dam. They need to get rid of some people, extra people there, useless eaters. The government needs to come in, step in. You got the 7th largest economy in California. Well, it's not going to stand long. We need to take it over. The drought, that drought was on purpose. And there's plenty of information out there about that. The article I read from with Loren Murray, it's on purpose. So the people who followed Hitler's orders, who actually caused the damage done by the Third Reich, are the people, really, the order followers, who have to change their minds. These are the people we need to get to. So the problem is not that evil people believe in authority. The problem is that basically good people believe in authority and as a result end up advocating and even committing acts of aggression, injustice, and oppression, even murder. The average statist, one who believes in government, while lamenting all the ways in which authority has been used for a tool for evil, even in his own country, will still insist that it is possible for government to be a force for good, and still imagine that authority came from path of peace and justice. Right, authority, yeah, help yourself. When Katrina was happening, which also was not an accident, Katrina is also about taking land, taking resources. Katrina, Syria, some of these other places, Aleppo. You know that people in the Middle East don't drink alcohol and they don't smoke cigarettes. That's a whole big organization of organ donors there. And organ donors are always living people who have their organs cut out of them, and the Clintons are involved in this as well. And I'm going to have to bring that up on one of these programs. And I see here I got 3 minutes. Thank you, Patty. So people falsely assume that many of the useful and legitimate things that benefit human society require the existence of government. It is good, for example, for people to organize for mutual defense, to work together to achieve common goals, to find ways to cooperate and get along peacefully, to come up with agreements and plans that better allow human beings to exist and thrive in a mutually beneficial and native civilization. But that is not what government is. Despite the fact that governments always claim to be acting on behalf of the people, the common good, the truth is government by its very nature is always in direct opposition to the interests of mankind. Authority is not a noble idea that sometimes goes wrong, nor is it a basically valid concept that is sometimes corrupted. From top to bottom, from start to finish, the concept of authority itself, anti-human, and destructive. And that's where I'm going to leave it today in terms of Larkin's book. I will post another link on my blog page at unitedwestrikes.com. I'll post a couple of these links at some of the articles that I've spoken from. I'll get more into the most dangerous superstition, which is the lie of authority, in the coming time. And I hope that you are seriously thinking about the truth. Because we are being used as human resources. That's why they call us human resources. It's for them. And when people say the governments aren't serving them, I disagree. They are serving us. We're the first course for their greed. And until we take ourselves off of that table, it will continue. So thank you very, very much for listening to me today. Maybe in the little break between your upcoming show, which is Turtle Talk with Patty Walking Turtle and Barbara Three Crow. I'm not sure if anyone else will be joining, but it's well worth sticking around and listening to. But in the interim, Patty, if you would play Mother, I Feel You. And when you're listening, please listen in the first person. Close your eyes and imagine your heart going to the earth, because Mother Earth needs our help. And we need to get back in alignment with our moral fortitude and with owning ourselves. So again, thank you for listening. And Patty, anytime, just you can put that music up, and then or not. It looks like it's 4:00. So okay, no worries. O to Water's too much. It was an MP4. I'll try and get that at another time. But basically, it's Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I feel your heartbeat. Way-a, hey-a, hey-a. Way-a, hey-a, ho. Way-a, hey-a, 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 ho. Bless yourselves. Thank you. I'll be back next Monday.